tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord?
Who are you?
I am Simeon, the Niger, and I was there, but then I was called Simon of Cyrene.
Oh yes, you carried the cross for Jesus. Why did you stay at the execution?
Do you believe I could have left? After all, what happened to me impelled me to stay and see through it to the end. Furthermore, even as I was wondering how men could be so cruel, vicious, and inhumane, I heard Jesus say, "Forgive them, for they know not of what they do." As I looked around at the persons gathered in, I saw there pity, sneers, pain, tears, and wonderment. On some faces, there was only indifference, and a few who appeared to be enjoying his agony. My own feelings of self-pity subsided, and the anger of being called out of the crowd because I was black disappeared. When I picked up the beam that had fallen under, and I heard him asking that those who had tortured him should be forgiven. What kind of man would do such a thing? I knew that I would be willing to follow a man like this into the very depths of Hades if he called me, and somehow I felt that he was calling me. His disciples knew what I had done, and they trusted me. Later, they told me all about what Jesus had done in his lifetime, and even more exciting, they heard him talking once he rose, and they also saw him. They told me about Thomas, who had not believed until he saw with his very own eyes, and he fell on his knees, calling Jesus' name and saying, "My Lord and my God." There was much that they shared with me until they knew that I would never be able to return to Cyrenaica. I went on to Antioch. My family went there, and we all became Christians. Many times I would have thought the same blood that had defined me as a Jew saved me as a Christian. Oh yes, I most certainly was there.
I was there too.
And who are you?
My name is Jesus Barabbas, that is, Son of the Father. My father was one of the princes of the synagogue, and he was not at all pleased with me. I was a rebellious son. I wanted to see Jerusalem free of the Romans. My father was afraid that I would start an insurrection and the temple would be destroyed.
You were the one Pilate let go free because of the crowd. Why didn't you leave the city and run away?
Oh, come now. Do you really believe that I could have left without knowing what happened? You realize that the other Jesus, Jesus of Nazareth, took my place on the cross. Do you know anyone who could have left in such a situation? You see, I was guilty of murder and deserving of the death penalty according to Roman law. My father had sent me word that I had a chance of being set free if I would be silent and do nothing when he called to come before Pilate the next morning. And then he sent another message telling me that I was disowned and I was not to stay in the city. He never wanted to see me again. But I could not simply walk away.
You must have known that you could be recognized. Yet you were willing to take the chance, even when the Romans who had let you go free would have been eager to get their hands on you again. Maybe another time you would not have been brought to trial, but quickly killed.
Oh, yes, I knew that. And I hid myself in the crowd. I stayed in the back, as much out of sight as possible. It's a strange thing, this feeling of foolhardiness and fear. Yet, I had to be there.
Why? What difference did it make to you?
I keep asking myself that question over and over. I suppose I could say that it was because of Getmus and Dismas, those two thieves who were executed along with Jesus. I did know them. They just happened to get caught, like me, but their luck ran out. They knew death was the price we paid for being outside the Roman law and getting caught at it. It was all part of the game that we played. The oddest thing happened, though, when Getmas began to revile Jesus, and Dismas told him to be quiet. They were dying on a cross, and they were arguing about Jesus. Then Dismas said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingly power." Just that simply, he said, "Jesus," like he'd known him all his life. And he got an answer. Jesus said to him, "Today, you will be with me in paradise." To tell the truth, I couldn't imagine Dismas in any sort of paradise, but he appeared to relax, and he died with a smile on his face. Getmas, he continued to curse and spit at the Roman soldiers until one of them went over and took a big maul to his legs. Then he died too.
What did that do to you?
It made me wonder even more about this man, Jesus of Nazareth. He took my place on the cross. I didn't even know him. I don't know if he'd ever heard of me, but he made no complaints, nor did he scorn me as he stood before Pilate together. There's something very different about him. Some said that he was the Christ, the Messiah for whom the Jews awaited. Others said he was an impostor, a magician, and he'd committed blasphemy, so he deserved to die. I would like to make a decision about him, but as of now, I haven't reached a definite conclusion. After he died, I left the city, and I never saw any of my family again. There is one thing I am sure of. I will never kill again. In that way, I am changed. I know I will never get another opportunity like this to do something good with my life. I'm still trying to sort out what I must do in response to Jesus' sacrifice, but I'm so confused. And I must leave without telling you what I may become.
Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree?
Yes, I was there.
And may I ask who you are?
I am John, brother of James, son of Zebedee.
The one whom Jesus loved? I should have known that you would be there.
Well, I considered myself his family, and I knew that Jesus' mother Mary would need support and consolation. Besides, we were all hoping for a miracle, although we didn't know what to expect.
In all that tension, do you remember anything special?
Certainly. Jesus looked down from the cross as we were standing close to the foot of it, Mary, his mother, and me. He said to her, "Woman, behold your son." And then to me, "Son, behold your mother."
You mean it was to you he gave that responsibility?
That's right. The other disciples had all run away and hid, and seeing him up there on the cross made me want to hate everybody. But Jesus demonstrated love throughout his ministry and still acted out of love even while he was dying. He knew I needed a reminder of his most important lesson. God is love. So to whom could he leave the care of his loving mother other than me? From that day on, I cared for her as though she were my own dear mother. I could never have rejected such a sacred trust he gave me. I believed he was truly God's son. I admit that I could not understand why God would allow his son to die like that. But Jesus knew why. And his charge to me was his realization that he had a larger charge to fulfill. Surely I could take care of his earthly work while he took care of the heavenly. His love for me was as great as for any person on earth, and my love for him was also as great as any human could have in their heart. His mother became a mother to me right then.
I was there too.
Oh, and who are you?
I am Malchus, and I was ordered to be there.
By whom?
By Joseph Caiaphas, my master. I was his servant, whom he sent to be with the soldiers to arrest Jesus in Gethsemane. You recall one of his disciples, Peter by name, drew a sword and slashed my ear. The high priest became very angry when I told him how Jesus had touched my ear and made it wholly healed. I said it was a miracle, and he flew into a rage. I was afraid he was going to cut off my ear again. But he calmed down and said, "You go and watch what happens to this fraudulent magician on the cross. Then come back and tell me of any miracles he performs." So I went, and I watched as I was told, and saw what happened.
Did you see any miracles?
I'm not sure, but that doesn't lessen the fact that I did see one when he healed my ear. I think I was hoping he would come down from the cross and show those people the very special power of God. That would have been something I could take back to Caiaphas. And I, for one, would have enjoyed seeing his astonishment. Nothing did happen, though.
Except what?
Well, it was only the 6th hour when night seemed to come on us. A most disturbing situation, since our law does not allow the sun to set on an unburied dead. Many of the Jews who were there left for their homes to commence the celebration of the Sabbath. I could not leave, as I had strict orders to remain until Jesus was dead beyond all doubt, and there was not the slightest possibility of life in him. Later I heard that as the eerie darkness dissipated, the veil of the temple was ripped from top to bottom, and the Holy of Holies was exposed to the view for all in the temple to see. Were these miracles? Even if they were, I was not about to risk the wrath of Caiaphas again. So, after Jesus was truly dead, I went back and told him about what happened in a very matter-of-fact manner, and just what I thought I wanted him, or he wanted to hear. But I know that Jesus touched me, healed me, and I will always wonder why he did. Still, I am a Jew, always was, and always will be. I never followed those who adopted the way, as they called it. Yet I was willing to accept the fact that Jesus was the Messiah, and I became what you would call in your day a completed Jew. I heard later on that his followers were called Christians in a most derisive way, but they accepted it as a name of honor and wore it with pride.
Not only was I there, I took part in the execution.
And what is your name?
My name is not important. I am only a spearman in the legion of my emperor.
You say you were part of the execution squad. How did you feel about the crucifixion?
I don't have feelings about things like that. It's part of the job, and I do what I'm told most of the time.
What do you mean, most of the time?
Well, we're not expected to think, just to obey orders. But I did have a moment when I acted impulsively or maybe rashly as a result of watching this man who was so different from the common criminals I had executed before. Take those two thieves, Dismas and Getmas. They deserved to suffer for the things they had done. I didn't care much about them. But I had a feeling that Jesus was fulfilling a destiny that was beyond my understanding.
What did you do? Did you disobey your
No,
orders?
never. It wasn't disobedience, but rather acting without orders. After I'd helped to hold him while they nailed his hands, they drove the nails through his feet, I felt a bit sick. But I didn't care. I didn't dare let it show. We soldiers are supposed to be tough. I guess that's why I was surprised at myself when I heard him say, "I thirst." I ran to find a reed and put some hyssop on it, dipped it into wine, and held it up to his lips. I wanted to do something to ease his pain. I didn't ask permission. I just did it. When I realized what I had done, I looked at the centurion in charge, half expecting him to call me for task for this behavior. He must have seen it, but he acted as though he had not. He was a good commander, but I was surprised at his attitude. To me, there was revulsion about casting lots for a victim's clothing, and I stood aside and just leaned on my spear. I watched Jesus' face, remembered thinking, I hope he dies quickly so he won't have to break his legs. I don't know why I felt that way, since I never felt that way before, but there seemed to be something special about this one, a strangeness, a sense that he had power and we were merely actors, that he was allowing us to play a part. I was relieved when he died, and the centurion told me to thrust my spear into his side to ensure his death. It was as though a great weight was lifted from me when he died. We couldn't hurt him anymore. I don't recall ever thinking such a thing previously. It bothered me to have been a part of an obvious misjustice. It was Roman justice. It was inspired by the hatred and connivance of the Jewish leadership. I felt dirty by the whole affair. Not that I gave up my vows to my emperor, but I did draw a little closer to the centurion after what he said at the end.
And what was that?
Why don't you ask him? He's right over there.
Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
You have something to inquire of me?
Yes, I do. What is your name?
Longinus. Is that important?
Perhaps not. The soldier told us you said something that affected him at the crucifixion. What was it?
I am not sure what he heard me say, but I suspect it was after Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "It is finished." He spoke not as one who had been defeated, but rather as though he was the victor after a hard race. And then he said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." I was impressed by what I heard, not only by what was said, but also the manner in which it was said, with strength and complete trust. It had seemed to me that he was in control of the whole situation, from the very beginning to the very end. I was amazed when he told Pilate that it was only because he was willing to allow it that Pilate could condemn him.
You were there at the trial before Pilate?
Yes, I was there all the way through his ordeal. It was my task to write the placard to place over his head, and I was assigned to the execution squad. The whole of these dirty proceedings are in my mind, and I must admit, it is a strange feeling for one in my profession. There is something you need to know about the Centuri. We are the real leaders of Caesar's legions, well-trained and very cosmopolitan. All of us are required to know 3 languages, and we are transferred often to keep us from going stale. All of us came up through the ranks, starting as plain spearmen, and we are seldom affected by anything. Duty is our total mistress, and total loyalty to Caesar is our foundation. Pilate is not a soldier. He is a politician, not a deep thinker, but a schemer. And he met his match and better in Caiaphas, who has learned how to manipulate people like rag dolls. When he realized that he had been outsmarted, he called for water to wash his hands, not from cowardice, but for political considerations. I knew there was no reason to condemn Jesus. Pilate did too, but he couldn't stand up to the threat of the mob. Understand this: we did not hate the Nazarene. He was a victim, and we did what Roman soldiers have always done to their victims. We abase them and mistreat them as an example to the witnesses of what we who have the power can do to those we control. I was there all the way from the palace to the execution hill. Along the way, I was impressed that this man did not cower or rail against us. When he spoke his final words, they were not in the manner of a victim, but rather those of a victor. I said something then to the effect that surely this man was the Son of God, even as he claimed. That may have been what the soldier was speaking about. I want to tell you that he is a good soldier and has a very good chance for promotion. He has learned to think and to act when it is right.
Will you tell us who you are?
I am Joseph of Arimathea.
It was you who requested the body of Jesus for proper burial. That was a heroic thing to do.
I am not a hero. I was a shamed and frightened man who felt that Jesus should not have to suffer any further indignities after his death. He was a true man of God, and he deserved a proper burial.
But you put his body in your own tomb that was reserved for you and your family. He wasn't of your family, was he?
Certainly not of my earthly family, but he was special to me. I acted as I did, partly from shame at having denied him during his life. Before you ask, let me explain. I am a member of the Sanhedrin and was there the night that Caiaphas called the meeting to decide how to eliminate Jesus. I was appalled at the traps they devised for him, the placards offering rewards for his capture, and their efforts to find someone who would witness against him in court. Nicodemus and I had some talks about it, and that we thought that we were strong enough and had enough friends in the Sanhedrin to put a stop to it. But we waited too long, and when the time came for us to speak out in opposition, we sat there in silence and did no more than abstain from voting for his death. It was my unresponsiveness that shamed me. You see, I just sat mute and did not cry out against the injustice and the illegal methods employed. Oh, I am no hero. You can see that. What I did for Jesus and for the sake of his family was as much to appease my own conscience in a sort of final gesture as for any other reason. Let me say one more thing before I leave. Jesus of Nazareth was the Messiah for whom we had been waiting and watching for so long. And I denied him no less than Peter and the other disciples who ran away when the trouble started. Don't try to make me a hero. Just look into your own lives and see if you have reached a decision about Jesus. Are you now ready to affirm that he is indeed the Messiah, the Lord of all life, the Redeemer and the Savior of the world?
I am Simon, and I became a Christian.
I am Barabbas, and I did not arrive at a decision.
I am John, and I knew from the first that Jesus was the Messiah. I was one of his disciples.
I am Malchus, a Jew who believed Jesus was the Messiah for whom we had been waiting and watching. Although I never became a Christian, I still believe Jesus to be the Christ.
I am the soldier who was disturbed at the death of this just man, but my loyalty remains with my emperor.
I am Longinus, and I believed that this Jesus was the Son of God. But I cannot renounce my vows to Caesar.
And I am Joseph of Arimathea, a secret follower of Jesus, but now openly one who will speak out for Jesus wherever I go. I too remain a Jew, a completed Jew, who believes Jesus to be the true Messiah. I asked you before if you have made a decision. What is your reply? Right here, right now, will you tell the risen Christ